Alright, so I've had to cut a section of it out, the corner, so that it sort of fits the curvature of the panel. That bit there, but as you can see it's pretty good width-wise, so it'll fit in like that, and length-wise it goes from about there to about there. Now there is a curve going like that and another curve going like that, which we'll have to put into this panel, but I think it'll be alright if I can tack it into the corners. Once it's got that curve into it, I can start welding the bottom and the sides and beating it down as we go. I'll obviously have to cut that away, but before we can get to this, I'll have to repair that chassis section underneath, and I've got some thicker sheet. So what we'll do is we'll cut that out, trim this side up, cut out what we need to from the chassis, and put the thicker stuff in. But in the meantime, let's bend this up roughly into shape. So here's the piece that I cut out of the chassis rail, relatively thick. I would say that's maybe 3 mil, maybe a little more. Anyway, I've got some sheet steel that should suit, but to figure out how much we need to cut, because it's a sort of curvy shape, we'll have to beat it flat, and then we can trace it out and bend the new bit up. Alright, that's pretty good enough to trace anyway. What we'll do is we'll get a bit of cardboard, trace it out a little bigger, stick it in the patch. Once we get that fine tuned, I'll put the cardboard over the top of the sheet metal that we're going to use and cut it up. So here's where I cut that section out that I'm going to use for the rust repair on the chassis there, and you can see it's pretty rusty, but it's all just surface rust. I'll give it a hit with the sanding disc later on, but you can see if I hold that up against there like that, it's the exact same thickness as the old piece. So I've cut that out, I'll hit it with the sanding disc, and then we'll put a bit of rust converter on it just to make sure that it's not going to rust again. So here's our little piece. I've hit this side with a bit of rust converter and a sanding disc. You can see that it's still a fair bit of sort of surface rust hidden in those pores there, but that should neutralize it. And this side I hit with the sanding disc, but I haven't actually put rust converter on it yet. I'll do that now. That should just make it go all dark, sort of black colour. We'll make sure that dries before we weld it in. Just for those of you playing at home, you shouldn't really touch this stuff. It is an acid, so wear gloves when you do this and make sure you wash your hands. I'm just not very smart. That's why I'm doing it with bare hands. The other thing I've done is beveled all the edges so I get a better weld, and I might even clean them up a little bit more before I weld it. But now what we're going to do is we're going to start to beat it into shape. So you can see I've sort of bent it to roughly the right shape. There's a big transition going up here, and there's another one there, and I tried to put a bit of a curve in that back wall, but that popped back out. I've got this corner, and that corner roughly in place, and I've just got to push this one further in towards the chassis. But what I have to do first is on this side, cut a bit more of this chassis back so that it fits in. Now all I'm doing is popping the piece of metal in a vise, figuring out where I need the transition and just hammering on it till it bends into the right shape. Alright, so I need to beat that in a little bit, give you a better view. So the top's good, the side's good, the bottom's good. It's just the top right hand corner and the right hand side that's got a bit of a gap in there. I don't know if you can sort of see that there. So I need to beat that crease in a little bit, and that should get us pretty close. If I weld the other corners in first, I should be able to manipulate that top right hand corner into place. And then once that's in place, we'll be able to get this panel. That'll sit roughly about there and cover it all up. And then we'll put some seam sealer up around the edge and the top, and it should be good to go. Alright, so I've just run a couple of tacks, one up there, one down here, and I've got to say, I'm not a good welder. I haven't welded with a MIG probably since high school, a good 15 years ago. That was amazingly easy. I literally just pressed the trigger and it did the tacks. It's really, really easy. Didn't even have to change the settings on the machine. So I've set the Y speed at 4.5 and the amps at 14. I ran a test piece. It seemed to work well. So I did those two tacks. So I'll set you up and show you how I'm doing it. That's not looking bad. Got good penetration down the bottom. I've got good penetration here where I've fixed up that cut. That bit's not too great because I'm mainly on the patch panel, not on the actual chassis rail. I've got to redo the corner because that tack came off. But along the top's pretty good, except for when you get up here. I had the current turned up too much and I blew a hole, so that at the top there's obviously thinner. So I'll dial the current down and I'll see if I can fill those holes up, bridge the gaps. That side's not too bad. I don't think I'll need a filler piece. I'll try and fill it up with weld. But yeah, that's not too bad. So once that's done, we'll get the finger sander or the file sander and tidy it up, give it a lick of paint and stick the patch panel over the top. Alright, so there's the chassis rail patch complete. I've welded all around the outside and I had to add a little bit extra on that side, but the welds are all ground down and there's no holes in the welds, so nowhere for water to get through. And I've ground it down flat enough so that the patch over the top will sit over without bumping it. Now what I've done is I've gone and bought myself some weld through primer. This is Dymark Zinc Gal. It says it's ideal as a weld through primer. I got it from Bunnings. It was about $13 for a, what's that, 400 gram can. You can get copper weld through primers, which I hear are better, but this is all I could get. And the reason why I want to use it is because when this Floorpan patch section is going to be over the top there, there'll be these sort of corner bits or edge bits that are pinched in, sandwiched in underneath these two bits of metal, and I just want to make sure that they've got some sort of protection and that they don't get water running there. Okay, so I'm about to weld in that Floorpan patch. And what I'll do is I'll start in the corner here and just tack weld it, and then probably do this corner here, making sure that it's aligned with the side. And once the base is in down here, I'll bend it down as I go, pushing, and do one side then the other, and then we'll work on that curve. Now this is a galvanized piece, it's got zinc on it, so what I've done is I've ground away the galvanizing, because that stuff's not very good to breathe in. I'm wearing a mask as well. So just a quick update. Sorry I couldn't film the welding. It was a bit hard to get the welder in there everywhere I had to with the camera in place, so I just had to move it out of the way. I've welded up this side here and ground it down. I've welded up that side there and ground it down. I had a blow through here, it must have been quite thin, so I've just put an extra little tack on top. It's tacked in up the top here and just along the side there. I do have a bit of a gap along the side here which is relatively large, so what I've done is I've cut another piece of steel which I'll sort of patch over the top like that, and once that's in place and ground down, the only thing I'll have left to do is fill this gap in, and I'll either beat that down till it makes contact and weld it, or if it doesn't look like it's going to reach, I'll get another patch like this and cover it up, probably several smaller patches. And then there's just this little cut up here that I've got to tidy up, and then it'll all be done. So I'll see you when that's done. So there's the finished panel. I added that strip up here and welded it in. It's not very pretty, but it'll do the job. It's all nice and solid. The only thing I haven't done is weld it along there, but that's below the line that the water's going to be at if it does run down the bulkhead or firewall. So I might actually just use seam sealer to seal that up. And so what we'll do for now, since this Floorpan's all finished, is get some of that sound deadener sealer and lay it in here, and then I'll get a bit of seam sealer on the edge there. That'll be it. Can move on to the other side.